This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. Brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this year. Today is the 23rd of December 2019, and I am 2J.
I am JM.
And I am DM. So today, this week, we will look at the top stories of 2019. And we'll begin with the first quarter, January, February, and March. What was the big news?
Yeah, so in January, it was a bit of a sad start to the year. On the 15th of January 2019, we had the Dusit attack that took place at 14 Riverside at the Dusit complex. The attack took the lives of 20 individuals with motives that were fairly unclear at the beginning. But Al-Shabaab did eventually take responsibility for the attack, claiming that it was in response to two things. One, Kenya's involvement in the Somali civil war, and the second was a reaction to President Trump recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I thought that was a bit of a weird connection, but yeah, that was a sad start to the year.
It really was.
Very, very tragic, sad.
But the positive side of it is that it really restored our faith in our security agencies, because the response was swift. And it was very effective.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, it took place between the 15th and the 16th, but by 10 a.m. by the next morning, they had finished the story.
Especially given our Westgate history and how long and agonizing
Precisely. It really was a job well done, and I think we really commended His Excellency the President for leading that operation, because you know, from behind the scenes, he was the one.
Yeah, he was present.
Commanding
things on the ground, and a very able team of police officers.
And I think, moreover, you were saying that we would also congratulate the Fourth Estate, the traditional media. For
the traditional media, I think, gave excellent coverage. And you see, at times like those where we have a collective sadness, it falls upon the media to also bring us together by giving a narrative that we can latch on, that we can empathize with, and also that we can celebrate, we know, when it comes to the response, when it comes to the saving of the people, and the work done by the agencies. So there was more bad news in that same quarter.
Yes, there was.
There was the Ethiopian air crash.
So the Ethiopian air crash, that took place in March, so the 10th of March. So there, as we know the story, there was a flight from Addis to JKI Nairobi, and the plane was operated with the Boeing 737 MAX 8. It crashed 6 minutes after taking off, killing all 157 passengers. But the story was quite interesting, and it shook the world, because 5 months before, in October, a Lion Air flight flying out of Indonesia crashed as well, and it was the exact same plane. So following the crash, multiple airlines and governments grounded the plane completely. And the cause of the crash was eventually linked to a faulty safety system that was countering the actions of what the pilots were doing. So the pilot says go down, and then the plane, decides to go up. So it was
a man versus machine situation.
Terrible.
Man versus machine.
Gender equality, we must. As of 2019, the crash and the grounding has cost Boeing $10 billion in revenue and compensation. However, the interesting thing is that they say that they're going to have the flight, or the plane rather, back up and running by March 2020.
I wonder how many passengers are going to willingly board those flights.
Not boarding.
So
I know, absolutely.
And
you know, the sad thing is that I do recall that in the first few days of this air crash, Boeing and even the United States of America took this in a very nonchalant way. They weren't phased by it, and they just decided to move on with life.
I think for them,
737 Maxes was still
flying
in the air. And then I think sense got to them, and they realized, wait a minute, this is way bigger than we think.
I think for them it was about protecting an industry, an industry that is American, but still.
But since then, they have, at least Boeing has expressly taken blame for it and apologized, and I think
CEO was fired. I think
he was resigned or fired. I don't know.
This year.
And are they compensating victims?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're compensating all the families. I think it was Ethiopian and all the families who had members that they lost. The 157.
But I also spoke to a Boeing insider, and he said, right, this is something that was bound to happen, and the mistake is traced back over very many years. Really? It dates back to about 12, 13 years of the pressure on the engineering side to just churn out the planes. But yet not have very strict testing and inspection on quality and that kind of thing. So sometimes some things end up getting, you know, lost. And then, a crash like that happens.
But on a lighter note,
on a lighter and political note,
yes,
is the story that you're talking about lighter? Because I don't think mine is.
Well, no, yours is. There was a fake Uhuru masquerading around town, right?
That's right. So there was a fake Uhuru. In fact, a fake Uhuru. His name was Gilbert Kirunja, a 33-year-old IT graduate. So, you know, maestro at mimicking the voice of Uhuru Kenyatta. So in February, apparently, he called Nasheed Merali and told Merali, I've got a big tender for you, my brother. Big one, big fat one. But I need 80 million shillings. But even before you give me the 80, just give me the 10 as a down payment. And I promise you, I'll give you the tender. And Merali was apparently out in London. And he got really excited, so he told his people down here, wire 10 million to State House ASAP. So State House sends a team in like 3 or 4 black Prados, chase cars, motorbikes, kila kitu. And they get to somewhere in Mombasa Road, collect the 10 million, go back in, and a few calls later, Merali has delivered 80 million shillings. Only to find out that it was a scam. A scam which had about 7 people, including this guy who was mimicking Uhuru.
Yes.
Completely aided by police officers and even people at State House.
Of course.
What an embarrassment to city tycoons. Surely speaking. You mean rich people are just as gullible as ordinary people? This is no different from the M-Pesa calls. Nitumie kwa hii number, please.
The other one is broken.
The other one is broken. Oh, you know, I've got a brother sick in hospital.
I remember reading this story and thinking to myself, why would you take yourself to the police station and admit to having participated in bribery? Because if the president calls you and asks you for money in exchange for a tender, that's bribery. It amounts to bribery.
It does. And you know,
potential embezzlement.
And Uhuru was leading the anti-corruption campaign. Even him should have asked himself.
That's a story he should have gone to the grave with, you know? Just die in embarrassment, just leave it there.
I think what we should be asking is why wasn't he arrested? So the onus is on
the story disappeared, didn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Still on crime, we had a lot of damn headlines at the beginning of the year. We were told that an Italian company called CMC di Ravenna was contracted to build 2 dams that we all now know very well, Kimwarer and Aror in Elgeyo Marakwet. And the total worth of the dams was 51.6 billion shillings. 28 billion for Aror, 28.5 and 23.1 for Kimwarer. But thereafter, we just delved into a sea of misinformation or disinformation because we had all sorts of figures, had so many inconsistent numbers. What was stolen? Was it 7.8 billion? Was it 19.8 billion? Was it 20 billion? Was it 21 billion? And we also had a fascinating story about 4 billion shillings being withdrawn from a bank in Westlands.
Yes, in cash.
In cash, put into a vehicle and then taken, as we were told by Kinoti later on, into somebody's house. Somebody that presumably he knew who the suspect was. So there were a lot of logical gaps in this story and a lot of assertions that did not add up. Why didn't the central bank know about this kind of withdrawals? But also what we found out, even from our own investigations here at the Fifth Estate, we found that 19.8 billion, actually no, this was from Henry Rotich's statement, because he put out the figures.
Yes, the figures.
19.8 billion was actually paid out. 12 billion was paid in insurance.
Yes.
To the Italian government, so it was a government-to-government transaction. And so therefore 9.8 billion is what was at stake. And here at the Fifth Estate, we really called to question the competency of the investigative and the prosecutorial abilities of the DPP and the DCI. Because what the observation that we made constantly was that why is a crime, especially crime to do with fraud, being declared and announced as it is unfolding.
Exactly.
You know, saying, here's the thief and this is what he's doing right now, instead of actually doing something about it.
Yeah.
It was poorly managed.
Very poorly managed.
This was also the beginning of the end of C.S. Rotich.
Oh, that is very true.
It was, and his grand arrest.
Don't preempt it. We'll talk about it this week.
No, it was the beginning of the end.
It was the beginning of the end.
This is when apparently people stopped picking his calls when this story came out.
Yeah, and I think the latest update on the story is from I think the 6th of December when the president cancelled the construction of the Kimwara Dam, which was 22 billion, 23.1 billion.
Yeah.
So, of those 3 stories, what would you guys say was your favorite of the first quarter?
Personally, I would go to favorite in terms of coverage, not of the story itself.
Yeah, the old tragic stories.
Yes, is the coverage of the Dusit attack.
Yeah, I would really agree. Yeah, the way it was covered, the way it was handled was very well done.
Yes, and as I've mentioned before, it really did restore our faith in the security agencies. And gave us hope in the fight against corruption.
Yes.
There we go. So Dusit gives us our best
coverage of the first quarter of the year 2019.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's our final thought?
And now our final thought, inspired by Fifth Estate classics. So this week we're going to take a look at some of our favorite books from the year. But today we're going to look at a book we haven't actually reviewed, but we've referenced quite a bit over the course of the year. The book is entitled 1 + 1 = 3. Yes, you heard that right. 1 + 1 = 3. A masterclass in creative thinking, written by Dave Trott. So Trott is a creative director, advertising writer, and author who writes on new and inventive ways to approach creative thinking. So this book is full of stories, little anecdotes, with unconventional wisdom for anyone who wants to think differently, stand out, and truly innovate. And I think for people who want to think outside the box, or as we would say, think without the box. So have you ever noticed sometimes when you come up with an idea or you solve a problem, you might be having a conversation with someone, and then in the midst of that conversation, you just have like a light bulb moment. Something about that conversation kind of like sparks a thought in you. And he says in this book that this is how we form ideas or find solutions for problems. Our brain collects all the information we need when we research and when we read, and when we think over it and it's incubating and cooking in your brain, that's when your brain is putting things together. And finally, outside stimulus, he says, helps glue all of this information together, and that's when you have that light bulb moment, the aha. And so this is what this book is getting at, that identifying and investigating areas that we are not naturally interested in massively increase the way that we're able to connect different ideas. And I think that the heart of this is being multidisciplinary. And I think that's what we focus a lot on. We are not journalists, right? We all have different areas that we specialize in.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what helps us connect a lot of the things that we come up with. And so Steve Jobs once said that the broader our understanding of human experience, the more dots we will have to connect and the more creative our ideas will be. And so that's what Trott is encouraging us to do. He says that any new idea is nothing more than a combination of old elements. So everything that is new has come from something old. But the ability to make those new connections depends on our ability to see relationships. So in order to see those relationships and to make those connections, we have to expose our brains and our lives to different ideas and different experiences. And so he says, under the old system, 1 + 1 = 2. But under the new system, if you are being multidisciplinary, 1 + 1 = 3. And I say, why not, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe just before you go, Jem, reading this book reminded me of the 21 Lessons for the 21st Century that we did, I think, a few weeks ago by Yuval Noah Harari. And he says in the book, in the 21st century, the most powerful way to deliver a message and to capture the imagination of wide audiences is through stories. And this is what Trott has done in this book, because every lesson that he's given, he's done it in a story. Every chapter is just a little story, collection of stories.
It's a remarkable book which I recommend that you get your loved ones, your friends
Christmas gift,
for Christmas. It's just great. And so one of the lessons he talks to us about is this idea of herd thinking, group mentality. Years ago, on an internal flight that departed from Kinshasa to a place called Bandundu in DRC, there was a flight, the flight crashed, the plane crashed as it went into land.
This is a small
It was a small aircraft carrying about 20 people, including 2 pilots. The pilots were very highly qualified. The plane was in good condition. And so the air crash investigators asked, what could the problem have been? Because everything was perfect. You know, the boxes were ticked off and everything sound. But there was one survivor. Now, when they went and questioned the survivor, they asked the survivor, so what exactly happened? And the survivor says, so one of the passengers carried a little crocodile. A baby, was smuggling a baby crocodile in a duffel bag.
Wow.
And just as we were landing into our destination, the crocodile got off the...
Escapes.
It escaped from the bag. And it starts, you know, crawling inside the plane.
The aisle.
Yeah, along the aisle. And so the air hostess, you know, noticed this, and in a panic, she went to the cockpit to report this to the pilots. But everybody else, all the remaining passengers, also dashed to the cockpit. To the front of the plane. To the front of the plane. And this is a small aircraft. So obviously it just nosedived. The pilots really attempted.
Because the weight shifted.
The weight shifted. It just shifted to the nose of the plane, and it just by the time they were getting back to their seats, there was not enough time for the plane to gain
recalibrate.
Go up again. And so that's he's delivering there a lesson about group mentality, groupthink, and this is what he says. Herd mentality is a strong force that we have to work towards overcoming. It overrides common sense. Think before you join the herd.
Also, the guy who ends up telling this story, he was the only survivor because he stayed at the back of the plane.
Well, not really.
necessarily.
No, necessarily. Only the crocodiles stayed at the back of the plane. That's why it survived. But as soon as it survived, it was hacked to death by a machete.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, the thing about the story is this. If those guys hadn't run to the front of the plane, the worst that could have happened is a baby crocodile bites you, which they wouldn't have survived.
Exactly. And that's the point of the story, actually. If they stopped to think, this is a small crocodile that big, with a mouth that big, honestly. So
the story I decided to highlight is on choice architecture. Also because we've spoken about choice architecture many times here on the Winning Headlines, especially from the book Nudge. I don't remember who it's by. But in this segment on choice architecture, he gives us a story about a group of girls in a high school in America. So the girls had just discovered lipstick, and they would regularly go to the female bathroom, try the lipstick on and giggle and look at themselves, but they would always finish by leaving their imprints on the mirror, like leaving a kiss on the on the mirror. And of course this annoyed the cleaner so much, so she goes to tell the head teacher. So the head teacher calls the girls to the bathroom and says to them, look girls, these imprints that you leave on the mirror are very difficult to clean. So you're causing a problem for the cleaning lady. And she said to the cleaning lady, please demonstrate to them how hard it is to clean this mirror. So the cleaning lady takes a mop, dips it in the toilet, removes the excess water, and cleans the mirror. Does the same thing, dips it in the toilet, removes the excess water, and cleans the mirror. And the head teacher said, girls, do you see how difficult that was for her? She has to keep cleaning back and forth. And so from that day forward, there was never any lipstick prints on the mirror, because they know that the lips are touching water from the toilet.
What a way to learn.
What a way to learn. Amazing. So you see, what he's telling us here is that, you know, architecture of choice just encourages them to another direction. You don't have to threaten people. You don't have to nag people. You don't have to force them to make a certain decision. You just give an array of decisions. But in those decisions, you have put a different architecture to encourage them to go in a certain direction.
I love that.
So I will leave you with this. We will leave you with this quote from him. You do not have to threaten or restrict or dictate anyone's choices. If you're clever, you can just rearrange the architecture. Thank you for joining us. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are also on your TV screens on GoTV, StarTimes, and Pang Free to Air. Have a good evening and see you tomorrow.